The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, published 2021. Horror, 339 pages. A serial killer stalks and murders members of a group of women defined by their will to survive against all odds. So Grady Hendrix is just basically my favorite horror author ever now. I would say favorite author ever, but I think that Rick Riordan and the Percy Jackson series will still forever hold the number one place in my heart. But if I'm just talking, like, not children's books authors, Grady Hendrix has completely won me over. This is the, third, fourth book now that I've read by him, and I have been amazed every single time. Just, they are so good, and I am in love. I am in love with this writing style. I am in love with the concepts, the pacing, the combination of comedy and horror. It's just great. So the book is about pretty much what you think it's going to be about. It is a support group for final girls, which in this universe is defined as a girl who's not only survived the mass murder of a serial killer, but also killed that person. So they had to fight back and kill the person who was attacking them. And more often than not, after they have kind of moved on and some time has passed, some kind of copycat killer will come in, or the person, that they defeated comes back somehow to come at them again. And it's not necessarily supernatural. Like, there are some elements of the book that do seem like there might be something slightly urban fantasy at play here, especially with the Dream King, who is obviously meant to be Freddy Krueger. Something goes... It's like a minute detail that happens later in the book, but suggests that there may be some supernatural stuff going on in the background, but that's not really the focus of the book. So, it is most definitely a slasher book, and pays homage to many of the classic slasher titles of the 70s and 80s. So if you are a slasher fan, you've probably already read this book, but if for some reason you haven't, most definitely go and do it. This book follows Lynette Tarkington, I think. I don't know, her last name was weird, but it follows her perspective, and she is so fascinating and tragic. I hate her, but I love her. I would die for her, but also I want to slap her. Like, she is a intriguing character to follow. And what happens is she is the member of this support group who has probably coped the least well, and this group includes a addict who is in and out of rehab and, in and out of situations. And I think I would still say that she has coped better than Lynette. Lynette has basically become 100% in survival mode. Like, she never lets her guard down. She is basically lives in a cage. She is extremely agoraphobic, and just reading about the process that she goes through to get home from the meeting, where she's getting on multiple different buses, going different directions, sometimes going in the complete opposite direction of the way that she needs to go to get home, just in case someone might be watching her. It's really sad, but you also completely understand that as someone who went through a severely traumatic event and then had that event repeat a couple years later after she probably felt like maybe it was okay to let her guard down, you totally get where she's coming from. And she is just very severely traumatized, and that has informed every single day of her life since. A lot of the other final girls have gone on to do other things. There is some lesbian representation. We have Danny, who is the survivor of what is most similar to Halloween. She actually got married, and her wife is in hospice, so that's something that she's dealing with. Heather is the one that dealt with the Dream King and is most definitely based on Elm Street. Julia was Scream is what inspired hers, and Adrienne was inspired by Friday the 13th, and she is kind of like the poster woman of this group because she actually took that trauma and was the one to kind of like buy the rights to her own story to when they wanted to like make the Friday the 13th or whatever the equivalent here is, when they wanted to make the movie about what happened, she actually got the rights and was able to make money off of it and then use that money to buy the camp and turn it into a shelter and support network for victims of violence, specifically women. There is a lot of examination of sexism in this book. It is specifically pointed out that it is violent men is like the main fear that all of these girls have is the violence of men. They're very wary around men, most of them, especially Lynette. Lynette will really not let men get close to her, and you find out that there are multiple reasons for that. And yeah, it's just really fascinating even before the murder starts happening. So what kicks off the plot is Adrienne is killed. Someone goes to the camp and slaughters everyone. Only one girl escapes, of course. But Adrienne is also then found dead in her home. She didn't come to the support group meeting, and they were all wondering why, and then they find out she's dead. And this really sets Lynette off because Adrienne was the one that she was closest to, and Julia then comes to her apartment. Julia's the only one who knows actually where Lynette lives because she's worried about her, and someone shoots up the apartment, and that sets Lynette like spiraling into this conspiracy of who's trying to kill us, what is their motive, how are they getting this personal information about us. It has to be someone from group, and Julia suspects that someone from group is writing a book, and that's where the person is getting the information from, and she thinks it's Heather. But as it so turns out, Lynette is the one writing the book, so she feels personally responsible. And that's where the spoiler-free section, that's as far as I can go. So I will talk more in the spoiler section now, but yeah, it is just an incredible book, an amazing writing style from Hendricks, as always, that combines the homage to the genre with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek comedy, but also playing it straight enough that you are invested, that you could definitely see this playing out as a slasher film. And the uncertainty that Hendricks writes with, I think, is one of my favorite things so far about his books, where sometimes you're not really sure if the protagonist is correct. And I said the same thing about My Best Friend's Exorcism, where that main character, for a while, suspects that her titular best friend may have been the victim of sexual assault. And for a while, you kind of go along with that theory. You're like, yeah, maybe nothing supernatural is happening here. Maybe she is just reacting really badly to trauma. And the same thing comes up in the Final Girl support group, where you do kind of wonder, due to the nature of how Lynette has handled this, is something actually going on, like a wider conspiracy that she believes, or was this just a couple of really tragic coincidences and she is overreacting because that is her mentality, her just survival mode is always on. So it's really interesting, and I'm not going to give away which is correct, but the journey this character goes on is really fascinating, and I think that if you like slashers at all, definitely pick this one up. And when you pick it up, some things that you should watch. I have 2 recommendations. If you lean more toward the comedy aspect and more toward the kind of lovingly making fun of some of the horror tropes and looking into things like that, just kind of the plot beats and everything and manipulating how those work, Cabin in the Woods is one of the better known films that does that, and I still really enjoy it even after watching it multiple times. I know that people talk about the twist of it and not spoiling that, but even if you know the twist, it's still really fun. There's a lot of little details to pick up on with each watch. So if you're more into the comedy aspect of the book and the of course, dark humor and horror trope examination, I'd say watch Cabin in the Woods. If you are really into Lynette's character as a final girl whose life was then completely defined by the tragedy that happened to her and she has just been waiting for it to repeat for the rest of her life, go with Halloween 2018. I don't know if that's like a unpopular choice. I don't really keep up with general opinions on movies that I like in case they do skew negative just because I want to enjoy the thing. But I would say the 2018 version of Halloween, which Halloween Ends comes out this year, and I will definitely be seeing it. But what that does with Jamie Lee Curtis's character, I feel like she would really fit in with this group of final girls and would really relate to Lynette. You might want to watch the original Halloween just in case you haven't for whatever reason. If you've never seen the original Halloween, watch that and then watch Halloween 2018. It's not like a reboot. It's more like a reboot sequel. Like they've thrown out all the other sequels that happened between the original Halloween and the 2018 one, and then 2018 is like a many years later sequel to that original movie, not taking any of the other movies into account. So I definitely recommend that one. I think it's just a good movie overall. So if you like Lynette's character and you like the tragedy and the examination of women in horror and the final girl as a trope in a not as comedic way, watch Halloween 2018 and it will give you all of those vibes. Or really, watch both. They're both good movies. There you go. And here we go with spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers for this book, jump ahead or click away now and go pick this book up because you'll love it. There were so many twists. And every single time, I was not sure what was going to happen next because Lynette, without really meaning to be, is kind of an unreliable narrator. Like the fact that the whole time Julia is talking about, oh, someone's writing a book. And Lynette's like, oh, wow, that would be really, really bad. And then you find out that it's her. Like, that was the first twist where I was like, whoa, okay. So things are going to get crazy straw up in here. And they do. Because for a while, Dr. Carroll, the psychologist that's working with these women, is very much set up to be the main suspect, and no one believes Lynette about that. I mean, no one believes Lynette in general because people just think that she's unstable. So she's kind of Cassandra truthing the whole time, where she's like, hey, something's going on. This is organized. This is not a coincidence. And eventually she comes to suspect Dr. Carroll because who else would know all of these things? And, aside from her, but she hasn't released her book. She's not planning to release her book, actually. She started kind of with the idea that she might, release this tell-all to make some money, and she was kind of blackmailed into doing it. But then she decided not to because so much of the information in the book was so private. It kind of just became like a diary for her to get her feelings out. But someone has access to it because someone leaked to Julia that there's a book. And so she's thinking it's Dr. Carroll. And it seems like a very plausible theory. She has all the access. She has kind of a motive. Like, she's been working with these girls for a really long time and, wants to make her mark in the field and everything. So you could definitely see that. There's a lot that just goes on with Lynette that is really interesting that I don't even really know where to begin to talk about because there's just twist after twist. And so the way that the serial killer who's actually doing the killing, and I'm going to make you wait for that, the way that that person is releasing information is that they are doing it in a way that personally hurts each final girl individually. Like with Danny, whose wife is in hospice. They basically provoke her into getting arrested so that she cannot be by her wife's side while she's dying, which is just, the ultimate, like, she's already losing everything that she cares about, basically, and she's so heartbroken, and then she can't even be there for her to spend her final moments with her wife. Like, it's that emotional, like, bombshell. So these, like, the targets are very specific, and the target for Lynette is that they release these letters that she supposedly wrote when she was a teenager to her monster. They call them monsters, but this, the killers, the monsters. Supposedly, Lynette was sleeping with him and, cheating on her boyfriend and writing to him about how much she hated her family and wished that they would all just go away. And apparently some of that is true, so not all of it. She did not sleep with or have a romantic relationship with her monster, which is something that the other final girls just cannot forgive because of someone else. And those were faked. But there was enough real evidence in there that it definitely makes it look like she did write those letters, and, like, that's very devastating. And I was losing my goddamn mind trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't, and it was so good. It was so well written. Speaking of the reason why they are so touchy about that subject, we got Chrissy! And immediately I just hear that, like, Stranger Things audio from season 4 with Eddie going, "Chrissy, wake up, I don't like this." Like, that plays in my head every time she's on screen because, so Chrissy dealt with things by going the opposite direction, where she has kind of spiritualized her whole experience and is in a relationship with I don't know if he's already, like, done all the murders or if he's going to eventually, but she's basically in a relationship with a monster. Not her monster, but a monster. And she kind of romanticizes the whole final girl thing. Like, she's written papers on how it's like a life and death thing, and how because women are the givers of life, men must be the takers of life, and he is trying to complete himself by killing women. And, like, it's very out there, but it's kind of interesting to, like, think of what would happen to somebody to make them write something like that and believe it, and to even aid and abet some of these killers. And, like, she collects stuff from all these different murder scenes. Like, she has a murder mobilia, like, museum. Wild, just wild fucking shit. And that threw me. I was like, whoa, okay, we are going places here. And then Lynette drives a car through her house. And, okay, this review is getting long, so I'm going to call it there. If the main character driving a car through someone's house doesn't get you to read this book, then nothing else I'm saying is going to do that. So if you absolutely do not care about reading this book, you must know who the killer was. It was Dr. Carroll's son, which should have been more obvious if you were following the clues about how a lot of this is about misogyny. Would have made a lot of sense. And yeah. The reason why this didn't get a full 5-rose bouquet is because I feel like the way that was revealed was kind of contrived, and there were a couple of things with Lynette and the detective who worked on her case that I didn't care for. But overall, excellent book, a amazing and rather surprisingly optimistic ending to this absolute bloodbath. Some good action scenes, like, holy shit, some of these action scenes. And through it all, not that many members of the support group actually died. I think Adrian was the only one that was actually killed. So, they are survivors. And they are going to make it. They're not going to give up. So definitely check this one out if you are at all interested in slashers, if you've liked Grady Hendrix's other books. definitely, definitely, definitely recommend this one.